welcome back to Character Class. Today we're going to talk about ropes and knots. This is your introduction to ropes, and the knots that we're going to talk about are essentially emergency knots. If you remember your citizenship should do task, one of them was to serve your community. Well, in an emergency situation, these knots will be very effective. Also, on a job site, you're going to need them. So the idea first is when we look at ropes, we want to discuss the classes of ropes today, the types of ropes, and the materials from the ropes. First of all, there are two classes of ropes. One is static rope and dynamic rope. Static rope has no play into it. I'm trying to stretch it right now, and I don't have any play. Key to this is strength only and no elongation. On the other hand, dynamic ropes have some play in them, and they can stretch up to 30%. Why the two types of ropes? Well, static ropes, what they do is they provide strength. You're going to want to use a static rope for a number of tasks, like sling loading, lifting cargo, or lifting somebody who is in need off of a cliff, like here in Colorado. They have to get somebody off a cliff, so when you don't want a lot of elongation when you're lifting them up. Also, hauling cargo, rappelling a descent off a cliff, you would prefer a static rope. Also, fire rescue, escapes, caving, if you want to go into some caving and spelunking. And also a static winch rope for recovery. You'll see the static and steel ropes as well. Strand steel that you use for recovery. There's also ropes that are static for vehicle recovery. On the other hand, dynamic rope has some elongation. As opposed to rappelling, which is going down, you don't want a lot of elongation. If you're doing mountain climbing and you're going up and all of a sudden you fall, well, that elongation, that movement is going to absorb the fall. So if you use a static rope, you could get injured. For a dynamic rope, you're not going to get injured as much. So it's definitely used for climbing, alpine, ice, rock climbing. This idea is to stretch when there's tension, and it's very good, very effective. Also nowadays you're starting to see ropes that are being used for kinetic recovery of vehicles. So if you saw Heavy D Sparks, ever watch his YouTube channel where he's digging people out of the Salt Lake, Utah area, he's got those, what they call snatch ropes or kinetic energy snatch ropes. And what they do is they have that elongation so that prevents the rope from breaking. Also, you're going to see this. It can also be used for rappelling. It can also be used for jugging, moving between areas. So it's not a bad rope, but static rope is much preferred if you're going to do rappel. So ascent, typically dynamic. Descent, typically static ropes. Now, take a look at the different types of rope. Those are the classes, static and dynamic. The types of rope include braid, double braid, twisted, and kern mantle. Let's start with just the twisted rope. Here I have a static utility rope, typically you get at Home Depot. You can see the way it works is you see those strands in this rope. Well, twisted rope, if you think about it, is yarn twisted into strands, strands twisted into rope, and so there's a twisting action all throughout. That is twisting rope. Think of ropes from that in the sailing days, the old ships. Well, that's how they did it. And rope makers often would just simply twist upon twist upon twist upon twist. So you would see that here you have a 3-strand twist that is composed of many yarns. This, of course, is nylon, synthetic. Now, the difference between twisted and the other ones is pretty significant, and they're called braided ropes. Braided ropes, if you think, you ladies out there, you ever braid your hair, that single braid in the back, long hair, if you've seen that, that is braided rope. Yarn is braided instead of twisted, and then it comes together as a rope. It's more stronger than twisted. Okay. Double braided is to take 2 braided ropes and integrate them using manufacturing technology. You couldn't have done this, or if you even tried to do this long ago, this would have taken forever. So double braided rope is actually 2 braided ropes come together. It's very strong. Now the last one is called kern mantle. All kern mantle is a rope. You can't see it because this is wicked, but on the inside there's a core of rope, and then there's a hollow, they're both braided on the inside, then a hollow sleeve, this black rope, is on the outside, which is also braided. That's called kern mantle. It's very popular. Why twisted? Just for strength purposes. What's the other issue? Well, for twisted rope, I like twisted rope if I'm rappelling. And the reason for that is there's a lot of friction in a rope. I don't have the twist. This is not a rappelling rope, but you guys will be seeing them in class. Twisted rope gives you that friction, so it slows down your rate of descent. On the other hand, kern mantle rope is also known as fast rope. So if you wanted to get in quickly into like a military situation or some sort of emergency situation where you want to fast rope in quickly, well, that's typically kern mantle. It's a very strong rope, very quick. These ropes have less friction, typically. The braided, double braided, and kern mantle, they have less friction, and so they have a tendency also to stretch more. So you'll see that. Now, those are the types of rope: twisted, braided, double braided, and kern mantle. Just remember, kern mantle has the core or the kern into it. Now that we talk about the classes of ropes, static and dynamic, we talk about just about the types of ropes, twisted, braided, double braided, and kern mantle. Now let's get into the materials that ropes are typically made from. Well, first and foremost, back in the day, rope was made by either hemp or manila rope. Hemp is a plant, no, you cannot, it's associated with marijuana. No, you cannot smoke hemp rope, okay? Nor do you even try to smoke marijuana. But if you ever hear an old person like myself say, that guy's smoking rope, well, that's because that's a slang or jargon for hemp, because that's the hemp plant. However, the rope that we have usually is hemp rope, is made as a natural material. It's strong and it does a good job. Manila rope is from the abaca plant that's in the Philippines. That rope was the premier rope for a couple hundred years. Matter of fact, you'll see rope advertised as Manila rope being sold in the stores. That's just like hemp, a natural material. The difference being is nowadays some people, advertisers, or some companies will actually sell hemp rope and call it Manila rope. That's not necessarily the case. So know that true Manila rope is the abaca plant from the Philippines. Now, those were natural materials. In the 20th century, as synthetic materials came in, the next thing we saw was nylon, which is a much more stronger material. Nylon used to be typically wrapped as a twisted rope in the 50s and 60s. Then later on, we started to see technology use braided rope and double braided rope. And with those, we saw nylon, as well as with kern mantle, but we also saw Kevlar. I don't have any Kevlar rope. You will be using nylon twisted rope in class. Well, you will be using nylon braided rope and double braided rope and kern mantle. But Kevlar, typically, that's a reinforcer. It's almost like reinforced with a rope that you do for vehicle recovery. Very strong rope. And then finally, polyester and polypropylene. Polyester ropes and polypropylene. The importance of the polyester and the polypropylene, well, the polypropylene has much greater properties in terms of fast roping. It has very less friction. So if you put in a carabiner or a D-ring to it and you decided to rope down or climb, it's very quick. It's a very quick rope.